All right, good evening, everybody. Just give me a thumbs up. Let me know you can hear me okay. I'm getting an unable to connect to chat on my end, so let me know if you can type something in. Sounds good, and I can see you. All right, thanks, chat. Appreciate it. Then I will ignore the message that says unable to chat. Good to see you all. We'll go ahead and get started. All right, we can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. And keeping the palms joined. All right. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff, and I'll be leading Intro to Buddhism and Meditation tonight. I call it Intro to Buddhism, and I've called it that. I think I've been leading this class twice a week for 10 to 12 years. And I always call it Intro. There are people who've been sitting with me for 10 or 12 years, and we still show up. And the idea is that, this introduction is that we're always learning. To me, I tend to focus on the core fundamental teachings of the Buddha, and then figuring out how do we apply them to daily life. Buddhism, like everything, can seem overwhelming, confusing, different traditions, lineages, schools, cultures, languages. There's so many things to get lost in. And for me, I like to take probably the core 6 or 8 teachings and just continue to work on them. Even if we look at the root cause of our suffering being greed, anger, and ignorance, you could spend your entire life just working on that. Just work on being less greedy, less angry, and less ignorant is really a beautiful practice. So for me, I think it's also probably my favorite Buddhist book, Zen Mind, Beginner Mind. It really is approaching everything with that beginner's mind and recognizing that we're doing something for the first time. So we just show up. And that teaching and that practice really is beautiful, especially if you find yourself in difficult situations. You find yourself maybe, which are, probably even more so now with the pandemic we've been facing the last 15 months. You find yourself in different routines, different situations, conflicts that arise that maybe didn't before, challenges that are possibly even more difficult than ever. And so if we allow those to compound and just grow day after day after day, then we find ourselves with this huge mountain of conflict and struggles and challenges. But if you wake up each day and just take each day, each moment as if it's never occurred before, then you're not carrying in the burdens and challenges from the day before or the years before. So the practice of learning to stay present and really just showing up for things the first time is important. So, anyways, I always like to start with a question. I see Bhavani, you've got a question already. I'll kind of hold that for the second half of our practice tonight. I'll open up to questions. So I'll start with that one once the meditation is over. But just to give ourselves a little bit of time as people settle in, a question for you all, which is, well, let's look at the three I just mentioned: greed, anger, and ignorance. What's the most challenging for you? Do you struggle most with greed, most with anger, or most with ignorance? And just to define ignorance, I think greed and anger are pretty straightforward, but ignorance, for those who might be new, ignorance is really ignoring reality, things as they are. I also interpret it as going through our day and thinking that our view is always correct, and being ignorant to the idea that the world functions with endless views. And ignorance for me is really thinking that my view is the only view and that my view is correct. So, question to get you all started, and there's a chat box there on your screen somewhere. I'll go ahead and type it in here. But these are called the three poisons in Buddhism. Of the three poisons, what do you struggle with most? Apparently, I struggle with typing the most right now. Greed, anger, or ignorance. Of the three poisons, what do you struggle with the most? Greed, anger, or ignorance? So there's your question. Like I said, we'll take a few minutes and just feel free to chime in as little or as much as you'd like. There's no right or wrong answers here. These are really just opportunities for you to express your thoughts, communicate a little bit, connect with others that are here, and see that you're probably not alone in your struggles. And if you're not sure, one way to look at it is the teachings of overcoming greed, anger, ignorance. We overcome greed with generosity. Excuse me. We overcome anger with compassion, and we overcome ignorance with wisdom. So if you're not sure where you struggle the most, then ask yourself, well, where am I with generosity? How generous am I? Where am I with compassion? And where am I with wisdom? It's kind of a, backing into figuring out where you struggle the most. Again, greed, anger, ignorance, the practice of generosity, compassion, and wisdom. And that's, for those who don't know, this is what's called the second noble truth, which is the cause of suffering, dukkha, as the Buddha called it. Discomfort, distaste, things that just don't seem right, dissatisfaction, anything that's kind of just seems out of sorts. If anyone's ever separated a shoulder, it's an incredibly painful thing. And the moment it gets popped or pushed back in, it's also the most liberating thing. And you're still in like tremendous pain, but the pain is nothing like it was when it was dislocated. So the practice of generosity, compassion, and wisdom is kind of like getting that shoulder pushed back in, that we're still going to struggle and experience pain, but at least we begin to wake up to why the pain is there. All right, so some responses here. Brian and Linda, ignorance with anger, close second. Yeah, I guess, and also, I mean, I could ask you that question next week, and maybe it would be, anger with ignorance, a close second. So obviously, there are going to be days and times in our life for everybody that some of these are a little more profound than others. So I struggle a lot because of ignorance. Linda, anger. Amy, ignorance for sure. Chuck, anger. Benton, for me, anger, easily annoyed when things don't work out my way. or when things don't go the way you think they should. Yeah, definitely. And so if we break that out a little bit, uh, ignorance with anger close second, and then you look at what Benton shared, the anger when things don't work out the way you want them to, um, that's definitely where the ignorance comes into play, is that we are ignoring the truth, and this is for everybody, that life is not going to work out the way we want it to. So when we have the wisdom to recognize that life is going to unfold in so many different ways, and we embrace that, and we open up to just being with life as it is, we don't have that resistance to what's going on, then there is no condition for anger to arise. And that's an interesting thing, is that if we have ultimate wisdom and we remove ignorance, then greed and anger would fall away. So, of course, all of these things are much easier said than done. But for anybody who might be new, I just want to share, in that regards, how these are all kind of tied together. That the ignorance of thinking that we are most important and that we deserve things and life should go exactly how we want it to, and everyone should do what we want. The practice is to embrace things as they are, and then ignorance and anger, as I said, fall away. So good luck with all that. All right, anything else before we start the meditation practice? I appreciate you sharing. And we do, Ben, to go back to that, we often jump very quickly. The ignorance is there. We all have it. And we so quickly jump to anger. It's just like this trigger that just happens so quickly. And I know, because that's where I spent, so much of my life, really. So, all right, with that, we'll go ahead and start the meditation practice. There's a couple things I'll tell you before we begin, for those who might be brand new or joining us for the first time. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. And the mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Am I doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside your room, outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all the chaos. Posture, you want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, it helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward. Allows the back to straighten, shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. I will guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. And most important with the practice is don't expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with your eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, you'll settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Going throughout the practice, you'll hear sounds inside or outside. These are not distractions, not disruptions, simply what's happening around us as we sit. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to your stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continuing this practice, observing sensation of breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought. Release that thought. Return to breath. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgment from the practice, just sitting. Breathing in, follow breath in, breathing out, follow breath out. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation, yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. Most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's not from anything I said. It's not from how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in, where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. We react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other moment of your life. And all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Driven, motivated, productive, successful, but with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun, but it's free. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else. That's it. So at this time, I think I'd like to just turn over to questions. I always prefer to respond to what's on your mind. So if you are joining us for the first time, welcome. There's a chat box somewhere on your screen. Feel free to type in any question around Buddhist practice, teachings, meditation, whatever it may be. And I'll use the rest of the time tonight for the next 15, 20 minutes to respond to your questions. There was a question earlier, Bhavani. Let's see. Namaste. How will mindfulness work when meditating and after meditation when performing daily chores? So there's a great expression in Zen practice. In brief, it's chop wood, carry water. And what this is really addressing is that regardless of before, during, or after enlightenment, we still have to chop wood and carry water. So before enlightenment, we chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, we chop wood, carry water. Now, I know your question is around mindfulness and meditation, but what comes to mind is that expression. And so I think it's important to understand that mindfulness is an awareness. And so your question, how will mindfulness work when meditating? Well, your meditation is the time to practice awareness. So when you're sitting and breathing, become aware. What is the sound of my breath? What is the sensation in my body? What is the feeling of the breath in and out? What is the sound that I hear behind me of the plane? What do my feet feel like on the ground or however you're seated? When I swallow, what does that feel like? When I have a wandering thought, what is that like? So these are examples of being mindful of what is occurring during meditation. Now, the second part to your question of after meditation when performing daily chores, think of it this way, that your entire life is a daily chore. And often the word chore is, sounds like people don't love chores, for example, usually. Kids, definitely not. But think of your entire life being a chore in a sense that your entire life is just things that you're doing. So if you're eating, if you're walking, if you're talking, if you're doing laundry, if you're climbing a mountain, if you're reading a book, everything you're doing is an opportunity to practice mindfulness, awareness. It's not separate from our lives. So very often people think that there's like your life and then there's meditation and Buddhist practice. Well, your entire life is a meditative practice. Your entire life is an opportunity to bring Buddhist teachings into it. We may do it sometimes better than others, but there's no separation. So again, coming back to the chop wood, carry water, when chopping wood, just chop wood. When carrying water, just carry water. When eating, just eat. When tired, just sleep. It's another great Zen expression. When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. So it's really just simplifying things down to each individual moment. So hopefully that's helpful and addresses your question. So other questions, meditation, Buddhist practice. Again, if you're new, welcome. There's a chat box there somewhere on your screen. Feel free to type in your question and I will respond. And again, we'll use the rest of the time for your questions or thoughts. Just a follow-up thought is this common idea that, you know, let's just say, for example, you were going to go through your day and then take off and go play basketball. Well, your entire day, you're not playing basketball. You're doing whatever you're doing, and then you're going to go play basketball. Well, Buddhist practice is, in that metaphor, it would be like playing basketball 24/7, meaning that you're always practicing. And very often people think, well, there's my life. This is kind of, I'm expanding on what I said earlier. And then I'm going to go do my meditation Buddhist thing from 7 to 8. And then I'm going to go back to the rest of my life. And so we tend to, very often for a lot of people who are new, think that your meditation or Buddhist practice is like the hour of playing basketball and then it's done. And that's really not what this practice is about. It is every moment. And even in that moment, if you recognize that you are being greedy or angry, ignorant, there's that awareness of it, the mindfulness of it, the recognition of it. So it becomes every part of every moment of your life, and really without the separation. So, all right, Cynthia, it feels like people outside of Sangha want, wish, hope to compromise the serenity of Buddhism, trying to stab to watch the bleed. I don't want to believe this. But has anyone else experienced this? So let me try to put that in different words and let me know if I'm on the right track. And obviously, anyone else, please chime in. This question's not just for me. But are you feeling like other people around you in your life that you know, friends, family, or whatever, are kind of attacking Buddhism or, you know, challenging you about it or making you feel like there's something wrong with it? So is it people that you know who are making you feel that are kind of attacking you about Buddhist practice? I just want to understand the nature of your question, not just for me, but for anybody else who wants to respond. So would that be a relatively good summary of your question? And then while Cynthia, you're chiming in on that, I'll jump. I see Lisa's question here, and this is actually a really simple one. Hi Jeff, I realized during meditation something I forgot to do and was preoccupied with it almost the rest of the time. Do you have any advice? Thanks. Yes, my advice is you should have just gotten up and gone to do it. And then maybe it would have been done. But instead you fixated on it mentally for 15 minutes. It didn't get done, but it might as well have, because all you did was think about it. So I give you the example of, and then Cynthia will come back to your question and thoughts. Lisa, I'll give you an example of how meditation practice can apply to your life in this type of situation. Um, so during meditation, often people ask, I have an itch on my arm. Like, should I scratch my arm or should I stay still? Right. And you've heard me say a million times during meditation, if you need to move, move. Um, but let's look at the specific question of, do I scratch my arm or not? So I could scratch my arm and come back to stillness. Or I could sit there for 15 minutes wondering if I should scratch my arm. And it would have been probably more productive to just scratch your arm and come back to stillness. There's a great story, one of my favorites, of the wise monk, the old Zen story of the wise monk and the disciple. And they came to a riverbed, and there was a woman who was an elderly woman who was having a difficult time crossing the river. And in the Vinaya, the precepts for the monks, they're not allowed to have physical contact. So with the females. So as they approach, they saw that the woman was struggling. And so the wise elder monk picked her up, carried her across, set her down, and went on their way. And about a month later, the disciple finally had the courage to ask his master how he could have violated the precept with that physical contact. And the master said, I picked her up, I carried her across, I set her down, and went on with the rest of my life. You have been carrying her with you for the last month. So I love that story for a million reasons, but specifically this idea of how many things that we just carry on our back for 6 minutes or 6 years or 20 years. So many burdens, responsibilities, pressures that we carry with us time in and time and time again, day in and day out. So coming back to the question, recognize the thought of something you should have done and come back to breath and leave it alone, or just get up and go do it. And you'll find that much of our life is that way. It really is. So, all right, Cynthia. Yes. With the challenge of my husband's cancer, I've stayed pretty steadfast. We meditate and we are good. But so many people are trying to say we are in denial. By good meaning we are doing well, not freaking out. Yeah, I mean, I think, Cynthia, and you've heard me say this before, so for you as a reminder and anybody else that, part of ignorance and overcoming ignorance is waking up to the truth of how things are. And the reality is your husband has cancer. This is not fun. This is not pleasant. This is not good. This is not pleasurable. This is not enjoyable. You didn't wake up and say, wonderful, I'm thrilled. But to me, what I'm hearing you say is you kind of added on after my question back to you, is that you're just being real with the fact that this is what's going on. And we're going to do our meditation and we're going to approach it with the calmest, clearest mind as we possibly can. And face all of the challenges and difficulties in the best way that we can. And I think that's beautiful. Now, my kind of suggestion, comments around, has anyone else experienced it, is that, yes, I'm sure most people who begin to practice Buddhism will experience it. And, Buddhist practices, as I often say, we're not out on the street corner holding up signs saying, come join us. We're not out there trying to save anybody. This practice is for you. And your challenge, Cynthia, and I'm going to go back to the words you used. And I'm also, I always try to answer questions as if I don't know you. But since I do know you and I know a lot of your history with all of this, I know where you're coming from. So I'm just going to, for everybody's benefit, the line where you say, let me scroll back up here, compromise the serenity of Buddhism, trying to stab to watch the bleed, right? My suggestion to you and to everybody is you're very attached, potentially, or maybe I'm just reading into it too much, to what other people think about how you are approaching Buddhism in your life. You've got enough to deal with. You have your life, your husband's life, the condition and experience that your family is in. That's enough. You don't need to spend any time trying to, and again, this is for everybody. You don't need to spend, my suggestion is you don't spend any time, anyone spends any time trying to convince people that it works for you or it's helping you. I don't try to defend Buddhism. You can't compromise the serenity of Buddhism. People are either peaceful or not. Buddhist practice is learning to be peaceful in your life. So if the practice is learning to be peaceful in your life, yet you're going to allow other people's views and judgments of your practice to jar you or pull you away from that peaceful place, then you're missing the point of it. So again, I suggest don't try not to feel the need to defend it or clarify it for anybody. It's none of their business. It's none of their business. It's for you. That's all. But yeah, you're always, and I think other people started to chime in here. Let me see what else we got going on. And yeah, you said by good, I mean we are doing well and not freaking out. So, this is the second arrow teaching that you've heard me share, which is, the first arrow is your husband has cancer. The second arrow would be the anger that he has cancer, would be the sadness that he has cancer, the depression that he has cancer, the misery. So from the first arrow of having cancer, now you're angry, sad, miserable, and depressed. Battling cancer and being there for a loved one through that is hard enough without all the added extra arrows and emotions. So whatever you need to do, you do it, and don't waste any moment trying to explain yourself. Okay, Benton, yes. Prayers for your husband and you. Lisa, yes, that's a great story. Thanks. You're welcome. Cynthia, Benton, thank you. Marisa, sending love to Cynthia. Katie, how would Buddha respond emotionally to existential threats to the world like global warming, sadness, acceptance, ignore it? Okay, let me come back to that. I just want to, my family think I'm involved with a cult. No matter how I try to explain, they don't or want to understand. I'm doing this practice for me. Yeah, I'm just responding to Brian and Linda's comment here. Katie, I'll come back to that. I just want to finish this train of thought with Cynthia. From Lisa, sending thoughts and prayers. Okay, gotcha. Good words. Yeah, like I said, Cynthia, you don't waste your time trying to explain it. You don't have the energy for that. It's just draining. It's exhausting. And I think what Brian and Linda shared involved with the cult is a funny story. Years ago, this is probably 10 years ago, I was leading, someone invited me to lead a walking meditation. And so we were at this, I don't know, like canyon reserve type place, and there were maybe 15 people there. And I was in the front, so I didn't witness this, but I was told about what happened after. And so I was in the front, and we were doing a very slow walking meditation, and I was in the front holding the bell like this, and I would, chime the bell every so often, and we would pause, and I don't know, so we were out there maybe 30, 45 minutes. But apparently, there was one uh, woman, and she had a child with her, maybe about the girl was probably about 10 years old. And they were towards the back of kind of this line of people. And I guess somebody went up to the 10-year-old girl and like tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Are you okay?" Because these people were freaked out that there was this slow, mindful walking meditation occurring on this like little mountain trail. Um, and so I just thought that was hysterical, that as you referenced the cult, I mean, there's all kinds of views that people will have out of just not knowing anything about what Buddhism is. And that's fine. Um, you know, uh, so yeah. All right, Katie, how would Buddha respond emotionally to existential threats to the world like global warming? Sadness, acceptance, ignore it. Um, Let me first start by saying that, it's a good question. And anytime someone says, how would the Buddha respond emotionally? I can't, I'll share some thoughts, but I'm clearly not the Buddha. I don't know what his emotional responses would be. So I can't really address that directly. But what I can say is that similar to our kind of topic or dialogue around ignorance, we practice overcoming ignorance with wisdom. Wisdom is that these things exist, right? There are existential threats to the world, um, in so many ways. And the practice, what I've learned from the Buddhist teachings, is that the practice is to be aware of them. So you're not ignoring it. Um, if you allow it to make you sad, like for me, so I'm not going to ignore these things. That would be ignorant. If I allow them to make me sad, then I'm going to have a really hard time staying motivated and inspired to work towards making change. And I've never been a huge fan of the word acceptance. I like embrace. Um, Often acceptance, I think, depends on the situation, but often acceptance is like, well, I'm going to accept you or accept something for how it is, but it really means that we're not okay with it. You know, um, so for me, it's embracing that these things, these situations are a part of our reality. And within these existential threats that arise, how can we bring compassion and wisdom into it, whatever it is? Um, that's what I've learned, is to not stay in my own perfect little bubble, you know, um, but to recognize that there are people and places that are suffering tremendously all over the world, and that I have an incredibly safe, privileged bubble that I live in. And I can either stay in that bubble, or I can recognize that um, the world is suffering and do things to try to help. So I hope that's helpful, Katie. So I think I'll pause there, or stop there, I should say. Um, and we'll let all of that. It's a lot of great questions, heavy thoughts, heavy questions. These are heavy times, so I think we'll let all that settle in for a little bit. But just to stress one more time, when you see a good movie or if you go to a good restaurant, probably not occurring much at all over the last year and a half, but and you go home and you tell a friend, hey, I just went to a great restaurant or I saw a good movie, they're probably not going to think you're weird because you went to a restaurant. They might even try the restaurant and not like it, and they still won't think you're weird. But you drop something that falls into the category of religion, or even if you want to just view it as a philosophy, and people don't know about it, they're going to think all kinds of weird things about you. And again, that's their mess, not yours. So, all right, so we'll go ahead and we'll join palms. We'll do a transfer of merit. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained be transferred to those who need it most. All right. A few quick announcements before I'll head off. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma Bum. We opened up the Dharma Bum Temple 14 years ago to bring Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks or nuns, we're not gurus or masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students, we're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and share it with those who show up. So thanks for showing up. We closed almost 15 months ago due to the pandemic, so we have everything virtually. If you go to the website, you'll see the schedule there. Huge recovery community, anyone battling addiction, drug, alcohol, or any addiction for that matter. We have those classes 4 or 5 times a week. Our morning meditation 8 to 9, Monday through Friday. So there's always something going on. We have a homeless hats project where we're making warm hats and beanies to pass out to those people who live on the streets and may need warm hats. So again, all that's on the website. I shared in the newsletter that just went out, the big question, which everybody wants to know is, are we opening? Yes, of course we are opening at some point. We have not figured out the exact time yet. I hope it is within the next 4 to 6 weeks that we will open to, at some level, we will return to having classes again. Again, a date has not been set yet, but I'd like to think if everything continues as it is, early July. But we're going to continue to stay cautious and be patient. The pandemic is very real. It has not gone away. And so we need to, out of caution and care for the people in our community, just continue to watch and learn. And San Diego, if the world is being opened up on June 15th, then we're going to stay a few weeks behind that to try to learn and see what others are doing and how we can provide the space that people need in a manner that will remain safe. So thank you all for being here. I wish you well. Buddha for You is same. Buddha for You is also closed. When the temple opens up, that will open up on some level as well. But if you need anything, you can always jump on the website there. So stay safe, wear a mask, don't do anything that would put anybody else at harm or at risk of being harmed. And I wish you well.